Hello and welcome to or back to my channel. It is time for another wrap up. This time we will be talking about what I read in June. So we can start out with some stats. I haven't really done this regularly, I guess, but I want to try and do this in all of my wrap up videos for the foreseeable future. I read 21 books in the month of June, which was maybe not an all-time high, but that's pretty high for me in 1 month. And I attribute this to the Amazing Readathon. I was not initially planning on participating, but my mom convinced me to do it, and I read a lot because of it. I also read almost 7,000 pages. My total was 6,897, and that managed to get me caught up on my page goal for the year. I am almost caught up on my book goal for the year too because of this. And for those 21 books, I listened to 77.5 hours of audiobooks. Most of these books I either listened to on audio or I tandem read. I read 10 of these books with the audio and the physical available to me. 4 of them were just an audiobook, 6 of them were ebooks. I've been reading on my Kindle a lot before bed, and I think that's why I've read so many ebooks. And then 1 was purely physical. This month accounted for almost 30% of my yearly reading so far. And my ratings, almost half of them were either 3 or 3.5 stars. This was just an okay reading month for me. And then I had 3 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 7 5 stars. I try to be critical when I'm reading, but if I really enjoy a book and I don't have an issue with anything that's in it, I will likely rate it 5 stars. So that's why my 5-star rating count is so high. For the genres, I read 3 contemporaries, 3 dystopians, 4 fantasy, 1 historical, 1 literary fiction, 1 magical realism, 3 mystery, 1 nonfiction, and 4 romance. I did not realize I read that many romance. The shortest book I read was Garlic and the Witch at 149 pages. The shortest book I read on audio was Convenience Store Woman. It says that I only listened to 1 hour. I think it was a little bit longer than that. Oh, I should also mention, when I log my audiobook hours, I always half it because I generally listen at 2 times speed, and if I know that I listened faster for a certain book, I will try and do that math as well. And then the longest book that I read without an audio was Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. That was 626 pages. It took me forever to get through that book because I didn't have an audio. And then the longest book that I listened to was Wicked. And we'll get into my feelings about that book. Formatting, I primarily read novels. 17 of the books I read were in novel format. 3 were manga and 1 was a graphic novel. And then my author status, so whether it was new to me or I've read them before, was almost split in half. I read 11 authors that were new to me and 10 that I've read before. 15 of the books I read this month were part of a series. 6 of them were standalones. My audience, the majority of them were adult books. 17 of them were adult. 2 were YA and 1 was middle grade, and the YA books did not do very well for me. The middle grade was okay, but the YA, I think both got 3 stars. And since June was Pride Month, super sad it's over, but because it was Pride Month, I was attempting to read as many books that were either mainly queer books or at the very least had a queer character in them. On this spreadsheet, I have 9 of them marked as queer. I think more of them might have been queer and I just didn't mark it. But I'm not going to go back and fix it. And 20 of the books were fiction and 1 was nonfiction. I think those are all that I want to share from this. I also want to share my library stats. So I last month had 738 books that I owned, and like I've mentioned before, this accounts for physical, audio, and ebooks. All of those factor into that number. And I had read 265 of them. Now, that accounted for 35.9% library read. And now, at the end of June, I still have 738 books. I unhauled just as many as I hauled. And I have read 275 of the books that I owned. So that's really good. I did read 10 of my physically owned books, and I am getting rid of I think half of them. We'll get into that when I show you all of the books, but that's pretty good for my numbers. I'm also really happy I'm making a big dent in my stacks next to the bed, so that's good. I guess we can get into what I read and what I thought about them. Okay, so for this, I am kind of stuck where I'm at, so I don't have a ton of mobility, so we're just going to go through the stack the way it is, and then I will go through all the ones I don't own, and if a book is in a vlog, or if it is rated under 4 stars, I will likely not focus on it too much because I have 21 books to get through. But I will still tell you my rating and if I would recommend it or not if I don't give you the synopsis. So let's get into it. The first book I'm going to talk about is Capitana by Cassandra James. This is going to be in a vlog. It's not done yet, so the vlog isn't out yet, but it will be soon. And I ended up rating this 3 stars. It was fine, but I'm not going to keep it. The next book I'm going to talk about is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. I don't think I vlogged this one, but I read it for the prompt. I think it was a cozy book for the Amazing Readathon because this is like a mystery, and mysteries are really cozy for me. I did enjoy this one. This book focuses on Amy Wheeler, who is a bodyguard for somewhat famous people, and her father-in-law, Steve Wheeler. And Amy ends up in the middle of a plot to frame her, I think is what's happening. It's been a little bit since I read this, so I don't remember everything. But she ends up calling in her father-in-law because he is a retiree, but he had originally been, I think, a police officer maybe, or a detective of some kind. So she ends up calling him in because she realizes that the situation is too big for her to handle on her own. And at the end of the book, they end up deciding that this was a good time, regardless of the fact that they both almost died multiple times, and they want to open their own investigation company. So I did enjoy this. I don't think I'm going to keep it because I only gave it 3.5 stars, and I'm just going to see if my husband wants to read it before I get rid of it. I do enjoy the Thursday Martyr Club, but I also felt the same way where I don't want to keep it because I don't feel like I liked it enough to reread it. So I think from now on, Richard Osman's books are just going to be a library borrow for me. The next one I'm going to talk about is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This ended up just being okay for me. I read this on my Kindle because I somehow ended up with a physical copy and an ebook. Don't know how that happened. I have since removed it from my spreadsheet as both an ebook and a physical book because I didn't like it that much. And I'm just going to pretend like I don't own this book, and I'm going to get rid of this copy. This focused on the maid of honor and the best man of a wedding that went terribly wrong. So the maid of honor has a twin sister who is getting married. This is her wedding at the beginning of the book, and she wins everything. So everything for her wedding was won and free. I think it said that she only ended up spending like $1,000 or something total on her wedding. And these free things include the buffet. And unfortunately for all of the guests, except for the 2 love interests, this buffet has a terrible bacteria in it that makes them all projectile vomit everywhere for a week straight. It's awful. But her sister has won a honeymoon to Maui, and she tells our main character that she has to go. And the only other person that can go is the, what is it called, the best man, because they have to, one, pretend that our main character is her twin sister because it's non-transferable, and two, they only gave them the last name of her fiance, so his brother is posing as the groom and the sister is posing as the wife or the bride. And these two hate each other a lot. And one thing leads to another, and they end up finding out that maybe what they thought of each other originally is wrong, misinformed, and they end up falling in love. And some other things go awry with the brother and sister who got married at the end. This says that it is part of a series. It's called The Honeymoon Crashers, and it came out in 2023. I don't think that I will be reading that, simply because I didn't like this as much as I wanted to. I have a couple other Christina Lauren books, I think, and I'm going to try and attempt them this year and see if I like them more, and if I don't, I just won't read her anymore. So, I don't know if I had mentioned, but this was 3 stars as well. I can honestly see myself dropping it down to 2.5 now that I'm rethinking it, but we'll just leave it at 3 for now. I did enjoy the parts of the book that were in Maui, but I think almost half of the book took place when they were back from the vacation. So we got like half of the 10-day vacation, and then it just sped through the last half. So we didn't really see a lot of them from the last half of the vacation, and I think that's what I didn't enjoy. It just had a lot of time gaps that I didn't love. The next one I'm going to talk about is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. I read this one. I don't know if I submitted this one for it or if I submitted The Verifiers, which is the next book I'll talk about, but I put this in my TBR for a book with unpopular reviews, but I think I'll like it still, I think is what the prompt was. That's hard to understand. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I was tandem reading it. I listened to the audio, and I didn't read a lot of the book physically. I actually may have not even picked this one up physically at all. I don't remember. But I really enjoyed the audiobook. This was about a field hockey team who is just doing terribly. Like, they are so bad. And they end up performing this kind of like ritual. Yeah, they do this like ritual where they all cut a tube sock of one of their teammates into strips, and they all wear the tube sock 24/7, and they somehow start winning and doing really well, and multiple players end up being on like the all-star team at their field hockey camp, and they keep doing these things, and they come to, they're like feeding this entity, and this entity is the reason that they're doing so well. They're like doing things in their lives that are not nice. They're ending up like sabotaging other people's lives, doing things that are really mean, and they think that doing those things is feeding this entity and making it so that they win, because when they start doing those things, they start winning again. And when they back off and don't do those things, they start to lose or like get close to losing. And this is set in Danvers, Massachusetts, where the witch trials began. They're really close to Salem, Massachusetts. So yeah, this is set in Danvers, where the witch trials began, and a lot of the players are descendants of, probably not the witches, because most of the witches died, but they're descendants of the people that were involved in those witch trials. So it kind of makes it funny because the captain, Abby Putnam, is a descendant of the Salem accuser Ann Putnam. So it's kind of funny that her ancestors are responsible for the death of thousands, maybe not thousands, hundreds of women who were accused of witchcraft, and then she goes and does witchcraft just to win field hockey games. The majority of the book is set in the 1980s, and I think Quan Berry covered that really well, which makes sense because here on the back you can see this is her as a baton twirler in 1978 in Danvers. So she was living this in the 80s, which is probably why she wrote it so well. It's I don't know like what else to say about it. I really enjoyed it. I would reread it, and I would read anything else that this author wrote. I think that the 80s nostalgia and the sisterhood that this book portrayed was just really fun to read about. And it's like Juan Barry has quite a few books. So I probably have a lot that I can read and see if this person could end up being a new favorite author. Oh, and in case it wasn't clear, I'm keeping that one. The next physical book I have to talk about is The Verifiers by Jane Peck. I saw Sid Bookworm talk about this, and it just happened to be available on a shop on Pango that I was already buying something else from for a friend, and I added this to get free shipping. This is a mystery book following our character Claudia. I think Claudia might be autistic. It's never like officially said in the book, but the way that she acts and the way that her brain functions, because we're inside of Claudia's brain for a lot of the book, makes me think that she is either autistic or, well, I guess if you have Asperger's, you're still autistic. So, yeah, she is likely autistic, and she has gotten a new job at the Verifiers, a dating detective agency in New York City, and one of their clients ends up dying. And the police ultimately deem it a suicide, but Claudia thinks that there's something fishy about the situation, and she ends up investigating and figuring out what actually happened to this woman and what is actually going on with these um, dating apps, and like the dark backside of that world. I ended up really loving this. I didn't think I was going to like it, but every time I picked it up, I found it really difficult to put it down, and that's why I ended up reading it in like 2 days. So I will also be keeping this one, and I will be moving on in the series. I think the second one just came out recently, so I should probably get that and see if the library has it. Next up is unfortunately a disappointment. This is A Scatter of Light by Melinda Lowe, and it is not a direct sequel to Last Night at the Telegraph Club, but we get peeks into the lives of the girls that we followed in Last Night at the Telegraph Club. I really wanted to love this because I really loved Last Night at the Telegraph Club. However, it just was not for me. And that makes me really sad because this is a really pretty edition. It's signed by Melinda Lowe, and I do really like Melinda Lowe still. Last Night at the Telegraph Club was one of my favorite books of last year. I still think about it pretty often, and I think that this one, the main character was just too young and acted in a way that made me not like her. So reading about her and her sexual awakening and coming out as bisexual, it should have been a good time, but it just wasn't. And while this book did make me cry, because I'll give you a trigger warning, so skip past this if you don't want to be spoiled. There is the death of a family member, and it's unexpected, but we live through it in this book. That made me cry, but the rest of the book, I was just so uninvested. So this only got 3 stars. Honestly, I could see myself rating it lower now that I'm thinking about it too. But this will be going to my Pango, and I will read other things from Melinda Lowe, but I would be interested to see if she ever writes like an adult novel instead of YA, and see if I enjoy that more. Next up, we have another disappointment, and that is Unfamiliar Fishes by Sarah Vowell. I was told to read this by my uncle, and that was probably like 5 years ago, so he might have changed his mind by then, I don't know. But this is a nonfiction about Hawaiian history, and I do think that if I had read this before I read one of the other books that I read this month, I might have enjoyed it more. But I read this like a week after I read another book that is also about Hawaiian history that I enjoyed much more. So this one only got 3 stars because I don't know, I feel weird reading about Hawaiian history from a white woman who is a tourist in Hawaii. I don't know. I didn't have a good time with this. The audiobook was fine. It was produced in a good manner, but I did not think that Sarah's viewpoint of Hawaiian history was the one that I want to be listening to, I guess is the best way to put it. She did talk about a few things that the other book didn't cover, so I did still learn some stuff, but I do not see myself ever returning to this book, and I'm planning to get rid of it. I know Sarah Vowell has other historical books that she's written, and I don't think I will read any of those after this experience. Next up, I have a surprise. It says Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, I think is how you pronounce her name. And this is about a woman who works at a convenience store in Japan. I think it's in Japan. Yes. So this was originally published in Japan and it was translated. I don't think the translator is credited. Oh, translated from the Japanese by Jenny Tapley Takamori. So this was originally written in Japanese and published in Japan, and I have the translated version. And this is about a woman who works for a convenience store in Japan, and she has worked at this convenience store for basically her entire adult life. She attempted to work in an office and it didn't go well, and I guess she has some physical limitations, like her body can only do so much, and her brain also like craves the repetition of working in the convenience store. But she is constantly being told by her family that she's weird and she needs to find a better job and she needs to become like a better adult and get married and all of these things, and she doesn't want to. She's perfectly happy working at her convenience store. But she ends up meeting this coworker who I guess is just working at the convenience store to try and find a wife. He ends up getting fired because he's being creepy to women patrons and his coworkers, and he gets fired, and then somehow she sees him and has a conversation with him and decides that he should move in with her, and she's like treating him as a pet. And throughout the book she keeps talking about how it's his feeding time and all this other stuff, and he lives in her bathtub, and she ends up quitting her job at the convenience store because he is also telling her that she should quit it and marry him and be a stay-at-home wife or something. And the problem with that is that he doesn't have a job, and he really struggles to keep a job when he does have one because he is so creepy. And she ends up quitting her job at the convenience store, and through her job search for an adult job, a real job, she ends up deciding that the convenience store is her happy place, and that's where she would like to be for the rest of her life. And it was just a really nice little story. The guy that moves in with her is creepy, but he does serve a purpose for the plot, so I guess it had to happen. But I really enjoyed this. I gave this one 5 stars as well. I primarily listened to it and had a good time. I would recommend it, especially if you like the current trend of like Korean healing fiction. So if you read like Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, or what was that other one? Welcome to the Hunam Dong bookstore. If you liked either of those, I think you would enjoy this too. Next, we have Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I will admit that I cheated a little bit on the readathon with this one because I had started it prior to the month of June, but I ended up listening to the majority of this, and I submitted it for over the top cover because this is kind of a lot, and like the audiobook cover has an entire movie scene on it, so there's a lot going on. I really thought that I would love this. I really thought that, you know, the social commentary that everyone talked about and how everyone loves the movie, it sounded right up my alley, and it just wasn't, unfortunately. This is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz, and it focuses on Elphaba and Glinda while they are first at school together, and then later on as they have gone down their separate paths, and they're both dealing with the awful things that the wizard has done to the world that they live in. I don't remember much other than that. I haven't watched the movie because I don't care much for Ariana Grande. I might watch it eventually once the second part comes out. I did enjoy the musical. I think that that will be my preferred way to take this story in. But because I didn't enjoy this one, I have two other books that I decided to get rid of. So I have Son of a Witch, which I think is volume 2, and A Lion Among Men, which is volume 3. I am going to get rid of these two as well because I have no interest in continuing the series, and these have lived on my shelves for so long. I'm pretty sure I've had them since before I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that was 5 years ago at this point. So, I didn't get rid of everything that I own by Gregory Maguire. I think I still have After Alice, Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister, and What the Dickens. And I will give him one more shot. If none of those three work out for me, I guess if I try to read one of those, which I think After Alice would probably be my best shot, and they don't work out for me, I just will get rid of all of the books I have by him and not pick any more up. I think I gave Wicked 3 stars. I don't know if I mentioned that. Next up, we have Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. This is the sequel to The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I really loved The Serpent and the Wings of Night. That one follows the two main characters that are in this one. I cannot remember their names. Oriah and Rain. So that one follows Oriah and Rain while they are participating in the Kajari, which is sort of like a Hunger Games style competition sort of thing. There can only be one winner and everybody else dies, essentially, unless there's something that makes them withdraw early, which happened to their friend Misha, who the next series is about. I'm going to spoil The Serpent and the Wings of Night, so don't listen to this next part if you have not read that and want to be surprised. So, at the end of The Serpent and the Wings of Night, Oriah wins the Kajari because Rain forces her to kill him. And her, prize, her wish, is for him to live still. And he ends up killing her dad, who is, the vampire king. Oriah is a human who is part vampire. You learn that at the end of that book too. And so this is following the two of them after the Kajari, and while Rain is taking over as king and trying to figure out how to make people bow down to him, pretty much. I thought that this one was entirely too long. I did not have an audiobook for it. Now there's an audiobook for it on Hoopla, and I don't know why that wasn't there a month ago, but it wasn't. So I completely read this physically, and it took me forever. It took me so freaking long to finish it, and it ended up just being okay. I think I gave it 3 stars, 3.5 stars, because it was so long. I did enjoy what was happening in the book, the plot points, but there were also some holes in the writing, and I just feel like this could have gone through a few more rounds of editing, and it would have been much better. I don't know if she was in a rush because everything was getting traditionally published because she was originally an indie published author. But whatever happened, this one needed another round of edits. At least one more round. I am going to keep this one for now. I'm going to continue on to the next series. I currently have The Songbird and The Heart of Stone. And then I also just received Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, I think, from Owl Crate, because at the time that they put that up for sale, I had not read this one yet, so I was not aware that I might not enjoy them. But I will try to read those two this year, and then I think the second one in Misha's duology comes out either later this year or early next year. And if I don't enjoy those two, I'm just going to be done. We'll see. And I will probably get rid of this one and only keep The Serpent and the Wings of Night and the Six Scorched Roses novella. Alright, the last physical book that I have to show you is Kills Well with Others by Deanna Raybourn. This is the sequel to Killers of a Certain Age. which was a book that came out a few years ago, and I was not expecting a sequel to it. I thought like that was it. But this one came out this year. This follows the same characters from the first book, except now they are on a boat. And if I'm being completely honest, that's all I remember about it right now. I rated this one 4 stars. I primarily listened to it, and it was a good audiobook. So there are 4 women who were previously assassins, and they had gone into retirement. However, certain events have caused them to come out of retirement for their safety. This takes place about a year after the first book, and the 4 women have been laying low since the events of the first book. And they get a call from the head of their organization and are told that they need to go on a new mission. And this mission involves them going on a boat. Did they go on a boat? I feel like they went on a boat, but the synopsis says nothing about a boat. They end up going across the globe and trying to figure out who in their organization is a mole, who is transmitting information that they should not be to other people. And they also are hunting down a Russian gangster, or they say it's an Eastern European gangster. I can't remember for sure if she's Russian. They're hunting down this gangster who is killing off agents, and we come to find out she's also killing off her own family because she is concerned that her family is giving information that they shouldn't be to these agents. And it ends up being connected to an art heist that happened like 40 years ago when they were young and first joined this organization. This one was okay. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first one. I think I will keep this for now and see if she's going to put out a third one or not, and if she doesn't, I will probably get rid of this and keep the first one because I didn't enjoy this as much. We are down to the books that I did not read physically. So let's start from the top. I read 2 books in the Bright Falls series this month. I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Ashford Parker Doesn't Fail. I rated them both 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed them. And I currently have the third one, Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, out from the library. And that is the last book in the series, so I will probably finish that this month, finish out a new series. These books focus on a group of girls who grew up together. So Delilah Green is the stepsister of Ashford Parker, and for a time they didn't really get along because Astrid's mom did not treat either of them very well growing up, and so Delilah came to think that the entire family hated her, and as soon as she could, she got out of that house. Her dad had died when, shortly after Astrid's mom and he had gotten married, and I think Delilah's mom is also dead. So the only parent that either of them has left is Astrid's mom. I can't remember her name, but she is not a nice person. And both of these books follow Delilah and Astrid as they are finding love again. Both of them have recently ended long-term relationships with other partners. And in Delilah Green, we see her fall in love with one of Astrid's best friends, who was one of the people that Delilah thought hated her in high school, because she thought that Astrid and her best friend group all hated her. So it was cool. It was fun to see them navigate that. And then in Ashford Parker Doesn't Fail, Astrid is like the only one of the group who, up till this point, is pretty sure she's straight. And in this book, she comes to realize that she's actually not. I think she ends up deciding she's bisexual. But she is on a like an HGTV style show where they're redoing a local inn. This is all in Bright Falls. I don't know what state that's in. Bright Falls, New York. No, not New York. Okay, it doesn't tell me where the city is, but they're in Bright Falls. And Astrid has been tasked with doing the interior design for a local inn, and the granddaughter of the person who owns it has come back and is a carpenter and is doing the majority of the work on this inn, and they end up falling in love. So that's a very brief rundown of the first two Bright Falls books. Moving on, I also read Hula by Jasmine Iloni Hake, I think is how you say her name. And this is the book that I read before Unfamiliar Fishes that I think ruined Unfamiliar Fishes for me. So, this is a fiction book that has sprinkles of Hawaiian history mixed in. I think it was like at the beginning of chapters that they put in historical context for what was happening in the fiction part of the book. So, this is set in Hilo, Hawaii, and it goes through the history of a family through like 3 generations of women and how they came to be where they are today and why hula is so important to their family and other families on Hawaii. So, we are focusing primarily on Hihi, the youngest of the generation. So, this is the first daughter of the woman who created the Merry Monarch hula competition. And her mother, Hihi's mother, won the very first Merry Monarch competition. And then she disappeared. She moved to Maui to wait for her. I think he ends up being her ex-boyfriend because he leaves without. They have like a fight and he leaves and joins the military. Because this is set in, I think, the 60s or 70s, maybe. It's during the Vietnam War. And he joins the military, and she goes to Maui to wait for him to come back because he didn't know that she was pregnant when he left. This is also a spoiler. Hihi is not this woman's actual daughter. She ends up having a miscarriage, and one of the other girls at the boarding house that she is living at is also pregnant, and she ends up giving away her child. She disappears the day after having her baby and leaves it with Laka, who is the daughter who won the Merry Monarch competition. And so we go, I think there are like 3 sections. So the first one is right after Laka comes back to Hilo with Hihi. And he does not look Hawaiian. She is obviously mixed race, and she is shunned by other Hawaiian children because of that, including her own cousins. And that's the first section. We go through her learning hula and the importance of culture and history, the importance of history to her culture and to her family, but she's also being mistreated because she doesn't look the same as the rest of her family. And then the second part goes back in time to when Laka is pregnant, so just before she goes to Maui, and we learn about David, I think is his name. Maybe it's not David. His name's not in the synopsis, and I don't remember what it was. But we learn about her relationship with him and how things ended badly because her family did not like him, and her family found out that she was having sex out of wedlock and could possibly be pregnant, and they think that she's a disappointment because she was chosen to compete in this hula competition. And that's a really big honor, and they think she has soiled it by allowing herself to be like sullied by a man before they get married or whatever. So that second part is about Laka's story, and then we jump back forward in time for the third part, and we are learning about Hi'i and how she eventually ends up moving away too. She moves to California and starts her own life, her own family, because she is sick of being an outcast. She is sick of not being included in this family, and we just follow their lives as they come together and grow apart. And throughout all of this, we are also getting snippets of Hawaiian history. So we learn about their king and how the US took them over and how they abused the knowledge that they had of like zoning and land ownership, and they forced it upon Hawaiians. But because Hawaiians are not, at that time, they were not educated on the way that land ownership and stuff like that worked in the United States, and they never wanted to be a part of the United States, they end up being screwed over a lot because they end up losing their land because they don't know how to protect it in this situation. This book was incredible. I really loved the audiobook. It made it easy for me to understand how to pronounce these spellings since I am not Hawaiian. I don't know their language. I only picked this one up because Noelle 7 Pages posted about it on Instagram, and I thought it sounded really good, so I was talking back and forth with her about the book and how much I enjoyed it. And it was just a really good time. So moving on, because we are almost an hour into filming this, and I think I still have like 10 books to go. I read One by One by Ruth Ware, and I rated it 3.25 stars. This was just an okay mystery. I felt like it was too easy to figure out who the culprit was, like 20% of the way into the book. So, it's a locked room murder mystery. They end up getting snowed into a cabin, and people start dying mysteriously. I just thought it was too easy to figure out who was doing it. I will still read Ruth Ware, though. I've read other books from her that I really love. And then I read 3 volumes of Blade of the Moon Princess. I read volumes 2, 3, and 4. And I am marking this as up to date because I don't have access to volume 5 from my libraries yet. I gave volumes 3 and 4 5 stars and volume 2 4 stars. This is just continuing the story from volume 1, which I've talked about in other wrap-ups. And then I also read Garlic and the Witch, which finished out a series. This is a follow-up to Garlic and Vampire, which is a graphic novel that I read a year ago. Yeah, I think it was almost exactly a year ago. And this is following the same character, Garlic, from the first story, but now they are friends with the vampire, and Garlic is concerned because they are starting to show signs that they're turning into a human. So, like, they get fingers to start out with. And so this goes through Garlic turning into a human and all of her friends turning into humans and how they are struggling with that. And then I listened to Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. This was a really short audiobook. It was only like 2-ish hours at the speed I was listening to it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and this was about a woman who finds out that her boyfriend is planning to marry another woman. He just casually announces that he is going to be marrying someone else. And it's unclear if she was the other woman or if the woman he's marrying was the other woman. I don't think either of them knew about each other. So she ends up leaving her life and quitting her job, spirals into a deep depression, and goes to work at this bookshop that her uncle runs. And she ends up falling in love with the bookshop. She spends a good amount of time there just healing from what she just went through and figuring out how to love her life again. And it was just a really nice little story. I don't know why its overall rating is so low. It has a 3.69 overall rating. I think it was much better than a 3.69. I also listened to Pictures of You by Emma Gray, and this is a contemporary romance, kind of, but it also turns into kind of a thriller. So this woman was in a car accident, and she wakes up from it with no memory of what happened. She is like back in her 16-year-old brain, and she has no memory of what has happened between then and the car accident. So she is married, doesn't know she has a husband, doesn't know that the man in the car with her was her husband until the doctors tell her. And as we are going back through it, they discharge her, and she is trying to like unlock her memories so she can figure out what happened and why her life is so different from how it was when she was 16. Where was I? She wakes up in the hospital and she has no idea what's happened since she was 16, which was almost 10 years ago. So the book is going through her trying to figure out what has happened in the last 10 years and why her life is so different, and her slowly starting to realize that maybe the man she married was not the nicest person. And we end up getting like the full story of why the car crash happened and everything like that. And I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. It is based in Australia, and the audiobook narrator is Australian. So if that bothers you, I would avoid the audiobook. And I just realized that this is actually the last book I had to review, so I don't have a stack to hold up for you of my hauls because I don't have 2 of the books with me, and I am still recovering from surgery, and getting downstairs and carrying them back up is really hard right now. So I'm just going to tell you what I got. I got Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, and I've already started reading it. That's why the dust jacket is off. I also received With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. I've also started this one. Also why the dust jacket is off. And then I got 2 special editions. So I got Owl Crate, and then a special order Owl Crate book, I guess you could say. I already talked about one of them. I pre-ordered Conquering the Vampire Slayer a few months ago, and that finally came. And then I also got The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, which was the monthly book. So I hauled 4. I think I got rid of 4. I don't know. The numbers end up evening out, so I think I hauled as many as I unhauled, which is not ideal for the book situation, but it's better than what I hauled in May, which was like 20 books or something. So that is it. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you soon with a new video. I am working on editing some vlogs, and I want to film like a mid-year tag video too, but with recovering from surgery, filming has just been really difficult. So we'll see what I get done. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time, and if you don't have anything else to say to me, leave me some kind of cat emoji for the cat that's on Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. Yeah, bye!